Hi guys, and welcome to Wilde. Today we're here with Sophie Smith, who is the host of Not A Groupie podcast. Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. It's lovely to have a chat.
We're so excited to talk to you more as well. So let's start by talking about Cactus City. Cactus City is the organization that produces the podcast. Tell us a little bit more about Cactus City and its purpose.
So Cactus City is basically a feminist organisation that wants to make the music industry safer for women and gender minorities. So we have loads of different projects on the go, but it started off as basically a pop-up safe space studio that came about from Vanessa, one of the co-founders, who basically managed female artists and had very similar feedback about not feeling safe in the studio. So that's how it started, and since then it's just become a fully fledged organization. And we have Sally, who has joined as like another co-founder, which is amazing. So one of the things that we have is a charter of good practice, which is specifically for recording studios, and it's things that may seem kind of basic, but are like simple pledges on how to treat people in the studio. So saying hi when someone walks in, and being aware of people's personal space. So that's one of our projects. Obviously, we've got Not A Groupie, our podcast, which is like a careers podcast for women in music. But also is kind of relevant to everyone, to be honest. It's just about the hidden job roles within the industry. And then apart from that, with Cactus, we obviously have like our social media, so we share a lot of resources, and it's just kind of a massive thing we're doing, and hopefully one day we'll take over the world.
Have you found any of the things that Cactus City has created to help you personally with any aspects within the music industry?
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the things that for me, obviously, like I haven't been in a recording situation in quite a while, because a lot of what I do with my band is live. We're next year in the studio, which is good. But it's more about actually the network and the community we've created around it. So before, I'd had experience of like sexual harassment in the music industry. Like I said, I'm like from a grassroots musician, and I'm in a rock band. So basically, I am one of the minorities. There's not many women in the gigs that we're playing, and very often I'm the only woman on the lineup, and I think sometimes I found it really hard to stick up for myself. I felt uncomfortable, and we're in situations I didn't really know how to react to. Whereas now, because we have this community, and also within like our work environment, it's so easy to just be like, this happened to me, it feels a bit weird, what do you guys think? And we'll have a chat about it. And yeah, so it's a lot of like the community around it that I think has helped me personally the most. And tapping into people when I'm speaking to them at events, some of our events, like networking events or women in music events, or we have like Story Slam as well, where I'm speaking to people that have been in the same position as me or are getting into the music industry and have had these experiences, and we're all talking about like this collective thing of like how the industry can be better. And actually some of my favorite conversations have been with men about how they've listened to things and been watching our socials and had no idea about these things that I think has made a huge difference personally to me. And definitely like the podcast is my baby. It's like the thing that I'm most passionate about. And yeah, speaking to so many incredible women, like from different parts of their careers, really. There's people that have been in the music industry for like 20-30 years. We've spoken to Carla, for example, who has just started. She like graduated the same year as me, so we're both in that new stage. So it's like advice from so many different industry professionals, about like how to get into the music industry, what to do in these situations, what skills you need. So I think actually the answer that I've kind of scooted around there is actually like the community aspect. I think has helped me the most. And the, like incredible feedback we've had from people, like people approaching me and being like, hey, you Sophie from Cactus City? I'm like, yeah. And it's really weird to me still, because I'm like, I love that I'm being recognized for doing something that is so close to home for me.
And Cactus City is doing absolutely amazingly on socials, and as you said, it's created this amazing community that has created this safe space for women in the music industry and for women in general. So this is so refreshing and so exciting to hear. We will get to the podcast as well, but before we do that, could you tell us a little bit more about your background within music?
Yeah, of course. So I have always had a massive love of music. I am not from a musical family at all, so I think it was a really weird kind of entry. I remember when I chose to kind of go to college and do like specifically music, my parents at the time were like, "Are you sure you can make a career out of this?" Because, you know, my family are from like kind of manual labor, semi-skilled backgrounds, proper like Cornish lifestyle. So I've always just been very creative. Um, so yeah, it took a while, but then I got to like uni, and it kind of was like a series of like little steps that I didn't realize would end to where I am now, which was I never actually thought I would get a job in music ever, to be quite honest. It just doesn't happen around here. Like, I'm so far away, being in Cornwall. Then I went to uni and did like specialized in vocals, and I met a lot of my band members there. So I've been gigging in my band Hamasha for like a good couple, well, I don't even know how many years. It's been a long time. Like, I started it when I was 17, and it's only just become a serious thing within the last couple of years. So yeah, like, I've just kind of done a lot of gigging around the southwest, and that's kind of been where I've had a lot of my kind of experiences of, oh, okay, the music industry can be a little bit dodgy at times, and that's obviously what led me to Cactus. But yeah, it's just been, I'm just everything music, especially if it's alt rock and metal, is like my jam. And even better if it's like full of women and gender minorities. Like, that's my newest, like, I have a little secret little project coming up where I'm going to be like shining the spotlight on kind of women in rock and metal and gender minorities, talking about their music and chatting with them, which I'm very, very excited about. So yeah, that's kind of a little glimpse into my background.
And now obviously you are a host as well, a podcast host. So back in September, Cactus City has started Not A Groupie podcast, and that is why we're here to talk about that. Tell us a little bit more about it.
So it's basically started off as we were having conversations with a lot of people about, you know, education and, you know, how they got into the music industry. And it seemed to always be the same start of, in some of these job roles, people weren't kind of expected to do that. So very often as a woman in the music industry, you're kind of expected to be a singer or a musician. And actually, there are so many more job roles within the music industry. You don't have to play an instrument at all. And I think it kind of came from that, really, where we wanted to shine a spotlight on all of these hidden jobs that may not be accessible or may not even be like promoted to women. So we're obviously very stat heavy at Cactus because we need to know the stats to know like where women are in the industry. So there's like less than 3% of producers are women. So you're seeing that obviously filters through uni courses. When I was at uni, there was 2 women that were in a production course. So these things are considered masculine jobs, like the more techie things. So we wanted to just show that everyone can do this, but also have those real conversations about how people got into the music industry, what advice there is out there, and what you should be doing to get into the music industry that is more than just network. Because what network is such a vague term that networking means different things to everyone. For me, it could be something different to what it is for you. So we wanted to have more like specific advice, more specific skill sets, and how to get into those job roles, and also to hear about the realities of those job roles too, because we want to hear the good, we want to hear the bad, we want it to be people to listen to these episodes and have kind of a more real understanding of what these jobs are before they even get into them. So we've had people from like production background, we've had musicians, we've had a music lawyer, we've got like people from the MU, we've got Vic Bain that came out very recently, who does a lot of equality and inclusion in the music industry. So she talked a lot about the stats of how many women are in the industry and what places, and, you know, what the overall feeling is and why, really. So we've had like a whole range of people from like tour managing, music PR. It's just kind of everything. We've tried hard to get like a diverse kind of.
That kind of leads me into what I was going to ask you next, how you choose who you have on the podcast,
Yeah.
to keep that variety. And as you said, obviously you've already had such a great variety of guests. What sort of thing would you want to discuss, hopefully, in the upcoming podcast? What kind of guests would you be excited to have on there?
Oh, yeah. So how we like choose our guests is very much just we were having a little look around to see what job roles were out there, and I think one like in the episode we had with Emma, who's a tour manager, so she's tour managed like My Chemical Romance, Placebo, Wolf Alice, and like big names, especially in like the emo world. So I was obviously really excited, but we struggled to obviously find like female tour managers, and to her she's like, I know loads, like there's all these people you could find, but from the outward world trying to look in and like find, it was really hard to find these people. So it kind of reinforced actually like how little there are women in certain areas.
Within the industry, as you said, it kind of, that's
Yeah,
a really easy way to point it out when it comes to looking for guests, and you're like,
exactly.
well, where are the women, where are the gender
Yeah,
minorities within the industry?
exactly. So it was a really good point, and we brought it up in the episode, and we talked to her about it as well. And obviously for her, she was like, there are loads of us, and I'm just like, it's hard to know where to find you, which is obviously exactly reinforcing the point. But I think for like definitely like next series and beyond, I'd really love to get into kind of some of like some more obviously like hidden job roles, like people in lighting, for example, and like live sound engineers,
And a more
and
technical side of music.
yeah,
That's
and
cool.
like photographers as well. People forget that they are part of the music industry too, that you're taking promo shots and like amazing shots for like music mags or whatever is going on, and there are so many incredible like photographers out there that I'm in contact with, but that I want everyone to be on the podcast really, but I would love to like chat to more people that are kind of using their platforms to create change. So there's quite a lot of like musicians and songwriters out there that have had very like obvious and public kind of problems within the music industry, or like encounters they've had. So we've got people like Rebecca Ferguson, who obviously is a songwriter, was on the X Factor, and she talks very publicly about her experiences, and she's campaigning for like better policies for songwriters. So she would be like amazing to have on. She would be like a great guest. And then people like Kate Nash, who obviously like had problems with her management, and is kind of very open about that, especially on like place like TikTok. So there's so many people, but ultimately, like if anyone has a really good story and some really good advice and does a job role that we don't hear about very often, those are the people I want to speak to. And I think learning and speaking to people on this podcast, and like the outreach and the people that have come from listening, I've met so many people already that I'm like, I need you on the podcast next season. Like it has to happen because you're perfect at what you do. And we haven't even had a music journalist yet, so
Oh my gosh, yeah, that's a big one.
yeah. So it's these things like, and radio presenters, like all these things that you don't necessarily have to be a musician to do. But yeah, it's just a chance to like celebrate people's careers, and also would love to like talk more about accessibility in the music industry. So we had Carla Kerslake, who works for like Live Nation Festival Republic, that is her job role is about accessibility at festivals and gigs. So they work very closely with a charity called Attitude is Everything, which they partner with I think most of their festivals, to make sure that it is like accessible for people with like disabilities, whether you're like deaf, blind, or if it's like people that are neurodivergent or physical disability, because everyone should enjoy music and be able to experience these things. Like this is why we all love music, is how it makes us feel, so it should be accessible to everyone. But yeah, we've had really great chats about accessibility of Carla, and then we've talked about motherhood in music as well, which is so important. But ultimately it's just like it's just such a gorgeous community, where everyone is so supportive of everyone, and that is like what all I can wish for, because it's basically me in a nutshell. I am everyone's biggest cheerleader, so getting to have a platform to speak to people and bringing out the best in them is my favorite thing ever.
It's so great for kind of younger people as well, because whether that would be people applying for maybe university or college where they want to be in music, having those resources there, knowing people that have worked within the industry, or being able to hear their stories could be really helpful for them, or even somebody who is trying to figure out what they want to do, and they are not aware of all the different things they could do within the music industry. What a great place to come to this wonderful community where they can get the support and hopefully figure out what they want to do with themselves as well.
Exactly. And that's literally it. It's that I wish I had these resources when I started my career in music, like especially like I've spoken to you about it before, but being from Cornwall, we're very far away from London here. Everything is a lot more sparse, and you really have to get into these networks, and it's hard to get into them. And actually, you don't know about these job roles. Like I would have never known when I was at college about being a tour manager. I would have never known that at all. So actually this podcast is honestly what I wish I had when I was younger. But the amazing thing is like unis and a lot of colleges have been really receptive of the podcast, and then we're like partnering with them in like a couple of different ways, which is like more than I could hope for really, because it's just showing how needed it is by how willing they are to you know work with us. It is
Absolutely.
needed, and it's for people in the music industry that have had years experience too, because we're talking about these conversations, and it's like having that validation of, oh, that happened to me too, or oh, that feels like familiar. And it kind of is for everyone in that sense. Like we're getting people that are starting their music careers being like, this is amazing, thank you so much, and people messaging us being like, I've had these experiences like listening to like this person's episode. This is like, honestly, that could have been my experience. It was identical. And I think having that community of like where we can help validate each other and talk about these things that are really important has been just, yeah, genuinely incredible.
And it just shows how big that gap was, and how much Cactus City and Not A Groupie was needed within the
Yes,
industry, in the UK, and to be honest, the whole world. But it's
exactly.
so wonderful to have it here and have this great community. What I really liked is in one of your podcasts, you talked about the name of the podcast. Could you tell us why or Cactus City has decided to go
Yeah.
with Not A Groupie as the title for it?
So everything at Cactus, our motto is the only prick in the room should be on a cactus for a start. So as you can tell already from that, we are ballsy, we are fierce, and that's the way it is. We're not making ourselves like palatable for anyone. And I think Not A Groupie came from the fact that so many people, we hear it all the time, are going into gigs and they're being like, oh sorry, no girlfriends back here, or only the band. And it's this constant term that is used to like belittle women and gender minorities, suggesting we're just fans. And there is nothing wrong with being just fans. Like I talk about all the time. I was an unhinged One Direction fan as a teen. I'm an unhinged Paramore fan as an adult. I have been part of many massive fan groups, and there is nothing wrong with that at all. But using the term groupie to weaponize us, it
But
keeps
using it
us.
as a derogatory term towards women in
Yes,
particular.
yes, and it stops you entering the industry or progressing into it as well, because it's that whole thing of, you're not good enough to be here, whereas we're using that as like a tongue-in-cheek thing to turn it on its head, and that's basically where it came from. Yeah.
And in regards to Not A Groupie podcast and the team, is it an all-female team? Is that correct?
It is an all-female team, yeah. So in Cactus, we do work very closely with a lot of men, with JVO especially as well. But within like Not A Groupie, it is a very small team. So Yaz does all of our visuals, and she's absolutely incredible at it. Molly is our in sound queen of audio, basically. There's no other way to say it. So it's all very female heavy, and it's a very like safe atmosphere. So we wanted to have like a safety policy for Not A Groupie, where we didn't want anyone to feel like they were being tricked or kind of into giving information or talking about things that they may feel uncomfortable about. So there are things that sometimes are deleted from the episodes where maybe we could be having a really honest, real conversation, but actually like this is therapeutic for a lot of people to talk about their experiences, and that maybe they don't want the whole world to know that, and that is absolutely fine. So we have a safety policy. Basically, at any point people are allowed to stop, or if you want to, everyone listens back to it before it is released, anything can be taken out, that's fine. And it's just me and Molly in the recording. So Molly like basically organizes everything, saves me in all of the technical aspects. I could not do this without her. Like and that's why it was really important for us to have her in so many of the visuals and stuff as well, because, you know, Molly is just as much as part of this podcast as I am. Like I could not do this without her. So yeah, we just it's all female in that aspect, and I think having such a small team work on it really does work well, because obviously we are having such intimate conversations. And the whole thing of when we started Not A Groupie was I want people to feel like I am a friend, because to me I'm genuinely interested in these people in more than like a journalist way. Like I care about these people and their job roles and their experiences, even now that, you know, we've been recording this podcast for a while and like slowly releasing it, that I'm still in touch with these people and I'm seeing them talk about their experiences and like post about new jobs, and I'm there just cheering from the sidelines like, you got it, girl, you're nailing it. And that's exactly what I wanted it to be.
That's so wonderful. That's so wonderful to hear, and I can't wait to meet the rest of the team as well.
Yeah.
I have one more question for you. It's a big one, but I'm gonna try to make it as easy for you to answer as possible.
You go for it.
If there was one thing that you could change in the music industry overnight, what would it be? I know it's such a big question to answer
yeah,
in a small way, but
I love it because it's what we ask everyone. Like whenever I do an artist feature, I ask it, and whenever I, you know, interview people on the podcast, I ask it. And I think it's such a hard one to answer, because I think there is this whole system that needs changing. But I think for me, what would I change? I think it would just be the kind of a lot of like the safeguarding elements to how we can like progress, in the sense of like I want people to feel like they are safe in the industry. And I know that's a hard thing to just change overnight. But I want people to feel confident and safe and be able to put their art first and foremost, and not have to worry about safety of getting home after a session or having their personal space invaded. I think that is the thing that I would change, because we've all been there. We all know what it's like to not feel safe. And when we feel safe, like the art really comes to life, and it shouldn't be choosing between art and safety ever.
I could not agree more. Thank you so much, Sophie. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for answering the questions today. All of the links will be in the description box, so go and check out Not A Groupie podcast and Cactus City, see what they're all about. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.